I don't like a lot of AI, period. I just think it's all a scam. I think it is just basically Google search on steroids, but not to the detriment where it actually helps people. I just don't believe that's the case. And I stumbled across this video, and I just wanted to put this out here because I feel like it kind of solidifies some of the things that I'm saying.
So I'm a professor of thermodynamics, and this week I decided to give ChatGPT and Google Gemini one of my exams to see how they would do. And specifically, this was the entropy exam from undergraduate Thermo 1. And ground rules for this were I gave them the exam exactly as is. I didn't limit either of them on any of the sources they could pull from. And I graded them on the same rubric that I grade my students on. And so I awarded partial credit, and I didn't allow errors to propagate, meaning like if answer A affected answer B and C, I didn't automatically count B and C wrong if A was wrong. I reworked the problem and gave credit for B and C if it would have been correct. So for reference, the class average was an 80, and I did print these off. I copied them into Word in the case of Google Gemini and graded it, and Google Gemini made a 77, so slightly below average. And I actually had to copy paste screenshots for ChatGPT, but it made a 78, so marginally better than Google Gemini, but still slightly below the class average, which I found interesting. So looking first at Google Gemini, it actually made two just calculation errors. If you raise this number to this power, it does not equal that. And I think both of the errors in going through and grading it were raising something to a power. And so it lost 2 points both of these times for doing its math wrong. Another thing Google Gemini was pretty bad at is finding the correct properties to use. So here I've circled this specific heat because it's the room temperature value of air. This is the ideal gas in this case. And for this problem, we were going from 40 degrees F to 600 degrees F, and so the room temperature properties aren't really applicable. And so it lost another 2 points here and some other places just because it was pulling the wrong properties. This is a similar but slightly different mistake. This is an R134A refrigeration problem, and so all the properties for the various phases are tabulated. And Google Gemini messed up because it used Chegg as a source, and I couldn't see the solution because, again, I don't pay for Chegg. But I guess whoever worked the problem looked up the wrong properties, and Google Gemini found that and got that part of this question wrong. So ChatGPT actually missed the first question where I was asking for the amount of generated entropy by a process. And I actually provided the mass, but rather than solving for the amount of generated entropy, it solved for the amount of mass that would be required for that process to have been isentropic, and then told me the generated entropy was 0. Anyway, so it missed most of this question because I guess it solved for the wrong thing. This was another bigger mistake by ChatGPT. This was a turbine problem where we were starting with a superheated vapor, but rather than going to the superheat tables, it went to the saturated water tables. And so I think I would count this more as a theory mistake than like a looking up properties mistake, just because you have to know the right place to look in this case. And so the rest of the points that they lost are just sort of repeats of these mistakes that I covered. And I do think that there's potentially some criticism of how I went about this. Like, again, you can feed ChatGPT textbooks. You can probably section off Google Gemini from certain parts of the internet to make sure it uses reputable sources. But I wanted to approach this from the perspective of I am a complete novice in this field. Can I give either of these models a question and have it sort of, with a high degree of certainty, give me a correct answer? And it seems like the answer to that question is no, because in both cases, ChatGPT and Google Gemini only got 2 of the 6 questions entirely correct. And again, the class average on the same exam graded on the same rubric was an 80, and both of these models scored below that. So to me, that means that neither of them rises quite to the level of understanding of the average sophomore undergraduate engineering student. And so while there may be some utility to experts who are able to go and do the checking and provide useful guidelines, of course, then you have to go verify that your guidelines actually work, and that introduces its own headache. I'm not certain that a novice in a field can go in and ask a technical question and expect a correct technical answer.
So there you have it. ChatGPT, a lot of these, they only have the information that they can scrub from the internet. And that's why they buy libraries of books to put all the information, the PDFs of the books and stuff into the models. But, it it struggles to do. So, you know, you want to put your life into the hands of an AI or something like that when it comes to maybe medical, or when it comes to, you know, engineering and the structure, the building of a bridge, or, you know, anything like that. And you really have to second guess, because it's scraping the internet. And from what I understand, because I follow this pretty closely, as of last year, last December, everything has been scraped from the internet. So all of these models only know what people are doing now. So if a new medical paper comes up and drops, that's how it sucks that in. So at this point, it's learning only on a daily basis what is left to learn, because it's scrubbed everything, all the knowledge that mankind has at this point. That's a problem. Some would argue, well, you know, it's going to learn like, you know, the super AI intelligence will be able to decipher stuff, and then come up with solutions and do it that way. But on its own, I just don't buy it. It just seems like a search engine. I think we're going to be in a lot of trouble down the road. I really feel like CEOs are just fleecing hedge funds for billions and billions and billions of dollars, because in the end, if it all implodes, they won't be holding the bag. Taxpayers will. You know, governments will get involved to bail out all these guys, and they'll still have their yachts and they'll still have all their stuff. And all they really did was build a search engine that can talk to you, pretend to talk to you, or make you commit suicide, one or the other.